Marcus, how are you, sir?
Hello, hello, hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Not bad. I'll say thanks for showing up, but um, I think I'm the only one left standing at this point in Intel who's working on this. But at
Oh my
least
God.
call in for the first 5 minutes to see if anybody else is around. So,
Yeah, yeah. I actually wanted to show up already 2 weeks ago. Uh, but yeah,
yeah, I was out of town 2 weeks ago, so
Okay, okay. So then I
I
don't
can't figure out how to get
have to
Dave.
feel miserable.
I can't figure out how to get Dave to give me permission to actually edit or cancel the meetings when I can't attend. So,
Why Dave? Oh, which Dave?
pause,
Dave.
uh,
Oh,
pause. Well,
right. Yeah. I also had to ask him last time, but he said because they're moving those calendars from one system to the other, and I still don't understand where they are in that process. But because
yeah,
whenever I have to deal with it, something has changed again, and I don't. Well, it's super hard. Uh, but yeah, so David should be able to help.
yeah. So I just things have been super busy, and so it's kind of interesting. Bruno and Prakash are both gone. Marcella is off doing other stuff, and Michael is now doing um, post-quantum crypto.
Super cool.
Of all things, right? Um, so anyway, stuff is kind of interesting because everything I had going was more or less canceled.
Hmm.
So my December was spent doing a lot of thumb twiddling, goofing around. No, not goofing around, but just kind of aimlessly wandering, I felt like. And so I came back and, within the first 2 weeks of coming back to the office after the new year, let's see, we had ARPA H. We have two big ARPA H proposals that went out. I got volunteered for an OASIS Standards Technical Committee.
Oh my
Somehow
God.
I got volunteered for uh, the World Wide Web, the W3C identity and verifiable credentials work. I mean, it's just like it's been this massive, like, okay, enough time twiddling your thumbs. Now you're going to be like spending all day working. So,
Mhm. Great. Can you quickly double check Discord, please? Are you still on
which,
Discord? The LFTT Discord.
yeah, hang on one sec.
Just wanted to double check.
Um, yes, I am.
Okay, cool.
So,
Okay. Oh, okay. I was just confused a little bit. Anyway, um, okay. Um, Sorry, where did I interrupt you?
so anyway, we're trying to figure out at this point what we do with PDO going forward. So, um, there is some interest in using it for um, MedPerf and the policy agents that are there. Um, there's some interest in kind of generalizing some of the trusted third party activity that's there. So anyway, a bunch of interesting stuff. So, but none of it is committed, and we don't have additional bodies to work on it. So,
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe we can, um, maybe find also some people from the community to jumping into PDO. and play with it and help, um, developing, pushing it forward?
Well, I mean, Marcus, we've talked about that several times, and we've done a couple of the meetups and other things. So, um, I mean, like I said, there's still a set of outstanding PRs, but there's nobody to review them at this point, and I'm not comfortable just committing stuff on my own um, to main branch. Um, So I just kind of moved into some of the developer branches on the side and some of my own personal branches to do that work.
Hmm.
So I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure that that's the right thing to do, or if we just sort of, I don't know about moving it into archival state. But I'm not sure what the best way is to move forward, or if we move it forward at all.
Right. Well, I mean, if I just think about it, I mean, what is the easiest way to get contributions? Well, go to the academic world and I don't know, make it a playground for students to play with. I mean, doing bachelor, master theses, use this as a framework to do cool stuff. Um, that might trigger some activity, but yeah, I mean, if you're saying, I mean, of for everything else, which is, I mean, let's say more client related. Well, if there is no team behind the project, which can help then with, I mean, resolving issues, developing it further, it might be difficult, right? Um, mhm, mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm hesitant to spend a lot of, back to my earlier comment, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's just that I'm being asked to do. I'm not sure. I certainly do not have time to make PDO code my principal job, um,
all right.
given the changes that have happened. So,
Yeah, yeah, let's see. I'm really hoping that this project is not going to die.
well, I'm not shutting it down. I was not planning on shutting it down. I still tinker. It's still a place where like I said, I kind of poke around doing stuff, but I'm not in a position where I want to sit around and wait for well, I can't wait for PRs to be reviewed, because there's nobody to review them anymore. So I mean, I've asked Steiner a couple of times to just put his name on something, just to give it a quick look through to make sure I didn't do something stupid. But he's not working on this project anymore. So
Right. But I mean, and I think nothing is wrong with you committing to the main branch. I mean, maybe just go again and look at the disclaimer and I mean, double check for yourself that you can sleep well during the night, that the disclaimer says, well, I mean, it's not for production, everything, even the main branch can be unstable or whatever. And then, I mean,
yeah,
you just push to the main branch and, I mean, have activity on the repository. I think that's fine. I mean, if there's no activity, then it also does not help in order to attract, I mean, contributors or users, right? If you
right.
just, I mean, hide your activity in a secret dev branch, for instance,
Yeah.
and
It's
as
not
soon
even a
as
secret dev branch, but yes,
yeah.
I understand.
Oh, so I would personally don't not worry about well, if there's nobody to review your stuff, that you cannot commit to the main branch. I mean, maybe we have to double check again what are the labs rules. However, as far as I remember, or I don't actually remember anything, any statement that there must be at least two people actively developing a lab. Otherwise, we have to shut down the lab. No, it's a place to, I mean, contribute ideas and as a playground, right? So that
Yeah.
is fine. So I personally don't see any issue with that.
All right.
But then let's better double check. But yeah.
Okay, so is this something that I would ask if possible? So I know, okay, I think the policy for the settings for the PDO repo currently require at least one reviewer.
Does it?
I believe it does, but I think I can, but there's nothing that prevents me from changing, but I don't think the PDO contracts repo does not. So I can push an explicit commit without a PR in the PDO contracts repo, but I can't in the PDO repo. I mean, it's just the settings, it's just the current settings for the GitHub project.
Right.
So anyway, I'll send it out to David and ask him what he thinks about it. So
Well, so I personally think that you should still create PRs.
oh, I completely agree with it because it's great documentation and it's the right thing to do. Yes, I'm not planning on pushing
Exactly.
the main. So
Exactly. So
yep.
okay, then we are speaking about the right thing. Maybe I just misunderstood. Yeah,
No,
I
I'm just trying
mean,
to figure out what the restrictions, what GitHub prevents me from doing and allows me to do. And we can check on the Hyperledger or distributed or decentralized trust or whatever it is now rules. So I'll check with Dave on the rules. But I haven't seen anything that said one way or the other, but this lab's been around for 6 years or whatever it is, 6 or 7
exactly.
years. So I'll check with him if
So,
we go.
so I'm just checking it. I mean, should be there, right? No, not here. At least then I feel useful. Oh my god. Where are the labs? Here are the labs. Okay. Person lab, active labs, lab government. Well, the only section what we'll speak about in the lab governance is about what is a lab steward.
Yeah. It really doesn't say much of anything in here that I can see. Oh, wait.
So,
The project should have multiple maintainers. Project should demonstrate examples of POC in production, use is public available, backing of more than one organization or individual. Legal issues. Yeah, other than the So here's what I'm looking at. Oh, wait, these are incubation. Oh, never mind. There really is nothing in the labs thing.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I will
So,
send a
so
note.
there,
Go ahead.
so there's the original proposal for Hyperledger Labs, which defined the original Hyperledger Labs, and now it's LFDT Labs.
Mhm.
But even there, it's nothing really saying that, hey, those are the minimum requirement in terms of people activity.
Okay.
So, well, so I think it's not a big deal. We just double check then with, I don't know, Rye or someone to see that you basically get rid of this. You need at least one approval in order to merge a PR and change it maybe to that at least the integration test runs through.
Right.
It's a trade-off,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
that's fine.
So I'll get a hold of Dave and Rye and just ask them what they think is right on it. Just as I guess Michael did approve that one. Okay, so here's a couple of other things for you that in my tinkering, I'm now generating Docker images on the GitHub or container repository. So you can
Cool.
actually pull them directly from GitHub. So
Yeah.
you do not need to build anything in order to get a functioning environment. You can just pull straight from GitHub for everything now.
Did you ever try to run this on a non-Intel machine?
I have run it on my personal laptop. So I know that it gets that far. Have I tried running it on a Azure VM? No.
Okay, no, let me be more explicit. Have you tried to run it on a Mac?
I have not tried to run it on a Mac. There's no reason why the client shouldn't run on a Mac. Obviously,
Well,
the servers are going to have a problem with because of the, well, I guess because the images are currently all simulation mode, it wouldn't be a problem. It might actually work on a Mac.
yeah, I can try that.
But the
But
client,
those,
there's no reason why the client shouldn't work on the Mac.
but this is in the PDO contracts demo repo or the normal one?
Yeah, both. So you need to, there's a PR that's, I guess Michael's approved it, so I can probably go ahead and merge it. So give me 1 second. So the PR that I just pushed out there actually has a bunch of cleanups and some additional documentation for how to use the images out of the repo. That's for the main PDO repository. And then there's a couple of things that are required to do the. Okay, so I got 2 PR. The Hello World is still out there, by the way, and should be better if you ever care to review it. But that's one I really need to close or merge at this point. But the other one is the automated testing. So the CI will now actually build the images for the contracts and run the tests
Okay.
for automated. And those images are also pushed to the repository. So, or sorry, registry.
But so are you saying that at this point in time the images just they are most probably on your private fork at this
Um,
point?
if you go to Hyperledger Labs,
Yeah.
and down into packages and do a search for PDO. So go to Hyperledger Labs, the
Yeah.
packages.
Okay, here's PDO client, CCF, and services.
Yep,
Okay, so I see. But so they are associated with the private data objects repository, not with
correct.
the PDO contracts repository. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering where to look for those.
Now the contracts one will also, it can also build, but it's still pending that PR, which is why I haven't actually pushed anything out.
So you're saying that the PR on the PDO contracts, PR 74 to enable automated testing, GitHub pull request, this just pulls then the images.
It will build the images. It adds GitHub Actions to build the Docker images and push them to the registry. And it will also run automated testing on pull requests.
Okay.
So the earlier commits are all the ones from the Hello World. So it has a dependency on the Hello World PR.
Ah, I see. So this is
Which is
why
fine. So the stuff
it
up
changes
above,
55.
yeah.
Okay.
So 63 needs to be committed, and then 74 needs to be committed.
Mhm. Oh, I'm just checking. So 63 there, I mean, I give it a pass already. And since then, there were like, this is 3 months ago, I see. Okay.
Yes.
Quite a while. So there are like 100 more commits. No, not 100, but a few.
Um, it's it's not so much that there were more commits, but they were cleaned up, and
Yeah.
um so the history is not going to look like, spaghetti code, um for better or worse, but it basically should address most of the things you had open. So
Okay. Yeah. So you want me to give it another try? Since now there are Docker images, which should be then maybe, I guess, easier.
if you are willing to give it another try, that would be great. I think I can get you in your 45 minutes to contract this time.
The challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me put this on my to-do list, and I hope that I could maybe schedule 45 minutes on the weekend,
Okay.
uh, or any other evening, and see if I can do that.
Okay.
PDR hello world round 3. Cool. Yeah, that would be great.
So anyway,
Uh,
it's to the point now that I don't do, I mean, even my contract development, I spent a little bit of time figuring out how to get Jupyter to do what I wanted it to do. And you can actually create a shell in the Jupyter, so you don't even need to SSH into the container down in order to do the work. Anyway, it's pretty nice. So
okay, cool. Yeah, I give it a try.
okay.
Um, so one other question for you. So
Yep.
we have now this the one attestation API lab where Bruno was basically putting this new cool attestation component, which also works with DCAP.
Yep.
And here,
Could you send me the link to that? So
absolutely.
I knew he was talking about it. I didn't know that he was actually doing anything with it. So
Yeah, I sent it to you via Discord and here on, what is this, Zoom?
got it. Thanks.
Yeah. And so essentially what this PR, so I mean, the repository is empty, but there's the PR to move that code in there. What
Right.
Bruno said, what this PR actually needs is another test on with hardware. And I have this on my agenda. I definitely have still this Abbott machine here under my desk. But since this attestation service had sunset last year, I'm not really sure if I can even test with Abbott anymore. I haven't checked that, if that still works. I guess not. Is there, what is the current, so if that Abbott attestation service does not work anymore, only maybe the production one, is there then still any chance to test this code? Is there a fake or a test Abbott attestation service you can download and install? Or
For Epid or for
for
Decap?
Abbott? For Abbott.
Oh, why would you want to?
Oh, well, because I mean, this component still supports Abbott attestation. I mean, there's this
Well,
code and
no, yeah, but why? There's no support for Epid. There's no, I mean, there literally is no support for Epid any longer. Why would we even do this?
exactly. So that basically tells me that, I mean, everything which is Abbott related should be
Removed.
removed.
Yes,
And
I had
the
this
question,
discussion with Bruno.
the question, I mean, the discussion would be, hey, should we remove it right before we do this PR or afterwards? Which, well, whatever is the fastest way to have something in the repository, I would say. So
Yeah.
maybe for the moment, just then ignoring the Abbott stuff, just testing in the decap things in hardware mode, merge the stuff, and then do another cleanup. Hey, thanks for the Abbott contribution, but not needed anymore, and remove it again.
There is a chance that I can do the testing, but the servers that I have are all pre-release, and I'm having a hard time getting attestation to work on those at all right now.
Mhm.
But that's partly because I'm pushing for trying to get this moved to TDX. Or at least trying to figure out okay, so the question that I have from a PDO viewpoint is, which of three ways do I go with the hardware attestation? Number one is to basically do Bruno's API and invoke that API. That's still going to require a lot of modifications of PDO in order to take advantage of that. Option two is to be inspired by Bruno's attestation API and rewrite it specifically for PDO. Option three is to say, screw this, we're just going to go to Grameen or TDX and completely move away from writing our own attestation code. So we use Cocoa or Acon or something like that.
But don't you still need access to a little bit of attestation logic to be integrate into the flow of PDO?
What we need is for CCF to be able to verify the quotes, and CCF already does.
So you mean CCF already verifies whatever framework you just mentioned?
Yes.
Okay.
CCF has their own has their own ability. So the way PDO has worked is the um, sorry, the contract enclave generates a report. That report is then sent with the enclave registration to CCF. CCF then does the verification of that quote, or sorry, report, before it accepts the registration of the enclave. In the past, we just shoved our own verification code into CCF, but CCF already has, because CCF is designed to work on top of multiple enclaves, already has an API for doing verification. We just never
I
used.
see. Yeah, this kind of makes sense.
So you need two parts. Well, sorry, the third part was that we were trying to do verification of the quotes or the reports inside a contract. That's extremely low priority, so I'm not too worried about that. But we had this conversation about, why are we not just using what CCF is already providing? And the problem is you have to be able to generate that report, generate the quote. And just the generation of it is non-trivial with DCAP.
But I mean, what I was saying. So I mean, can't you actually also integrate the CCF abstraction into Bruno's one attestation API as yet another, let's say, adapter or whatever? And I mean, so now you're asking, so why would he do that?
Yeah, that was exactly the question I was going to ask is, yeah, I probably could. So why?
No, well, so I think, I mean, what is nice about this attestation API that it's basically, I mean, very heavily inspired by this generic attestation construct we basically came up when we built FPC, so that we can actually inject different providers. Also, DCAP. I mean, back when we wrote this abstraction, then we knew that DCAP will come, but it was just not there, right? And so therefore, I mean, for FPC, this API looks pretty well compatible, I would say.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I cannot judge how much work it is to integrate this in PDO. However, I thought, well, it's not that much work for PDO, since it was basically also written by Bruno, who also was responsible for the attestation part in PDO. However, so what I was thinking is, so if this, let's say, the one API is kind of already in a shape which is more or less easy to consume, but you're actually wondering, so if you still want to use this real DCAP or the DCAP implementation of that, well, why don't we also try to inject yet another format or yet another backend if needed? So we are super flexible. So I think the positive or advantage of this approach that you're actually, for the PDO perspective, you don't really rely on the attestation implementation provided by CCF. You can still,
Yeah, we don't currently.
right? But so then, if you just depend on one API, let's call it one API, then you just depend on that, and if that provides you the CCF implementation as well, great. That's just a configuration or a build flag. But you would not require to integrate their API, and then, I don't know, in 5 years, well, there is something better. Again, there's no need to change that one. I don't know, those are just my thoughts around that.
It's well, okay, and like I said, the other approach on this is to go the other direction and say, screw this, we're just going to shove it inside Grameen. Um, okay, there are reasons why I don't want to do that, but we're just going to shove it inside Grameen and let somebody else do the implementation completely, and all we have to do is grab the quote from the TLS session. And it's, I mean, the problem, Marcus, is that Intel, between Intel, AMD, and the rest, the ability to generate verifiable quotes is inconsistent across different hardware platforms. So,
Right.
I mean, unless there's a commitment to keep this up to date for like, in my case, I have the servers that I'm doing development on are multi-package and pre-release, which turns out to be a real pain in the butt. I mean, because the policies don't match, right? It's pre-release hardware. It's not supposed to be verifiable, at least not by ITA. So,
I see. Um, yeah. But again, I mean, so what are we going to do with this attestation API? I think, I mean, from my side, what I mean needs to be done, we have to see if we can actually use this as part of the C++ or C FPC chain code, but could it be also used with the Go version? And the Go version basically relies on how it's called Open Enclave DCAP
right,
attestation. And so there the idea was basically, hey, if we can just compile the one attestation API, links this into the enclave, and then just modify the little Go API to not call the Open Enclave attestation
but to
generation
call this one,
API,
yeah,
and just call this one. And honestly, at this moment, I have no clue how to do that.
yeah.
But should not be so hard. But yeah, ideally, I
I'm
can
glad I'm
squeeze
glad
in
you
for
think
that.
that way. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure
So
it's a mere matter of programming, right? How hard could it
I
be?
think, yeah, absolutely. Well, you just have to think, oh, what else would you do on that weekend? Go hike, go hiking, go mountain biking.
I can't think of anything else that I would do that weekend. So,
Ah,
well, then let me turn around and ask you a different kind of question, right? Which is all this is sort of still focused on um, uh, a separate enclave rather than on a secure VM.
well,
What
this
happens if you move to that model of it and you start thinking, and by the way, there are pros and cons to this, right? The enclave gives you a nice, well-defined TCB that you can
right.
attest to. And anytime you're doing a confidential VM, your TCB expands significantly.
Um, Absolutely. I think, I mean, then the question is, I mean, does this model of, I mean, isolating just the chain code by itself, I mean, would you do that, or would you then just run the entire peer? What for me actually would make sense is also fits pretty well with the deployment model of smart contracts and Fabric. If you basically think about isolated containers, and then pick any of those confidential container projects you want,
Right.
uh, and use this as a as a basis, that would actually work pretty well, I believe. In particular,
Yeah.
the chain code is anyway already packaged.
Yep.
I mean, as a container, it runs there, and in all our, let's say, mock implementation for testing without SJX, in particular the Go one, we just compile pure Go code, packs this in a container, starts this, and when we call via Go this attestation API we have there, I mean, we just generate a fake quote. However, that could be then, I mean, forwarded to the quote provider on that virtual, on that secure VM or secure container cluster.
Right.
So
Well,
that I
go
think
ahead.
for FPC this makes sense, and then you still have the model that you basically want to say, okay, you have still each smart contract in its own isolated container or VM.
Right.
Well, if
I mean,
the admin then decides to deploy multiple contracts on the same VM, so what? It's their decision. We just don't recommend this, right?
yeah. And I would come back and I would say, the PDO approach would be more about layering. That what we want is a container that is that essentially reflects the interpreter, and then the interpreter can um, compose its attestation with the attestation of the little WASM chunk of code that's running in there.
Right.
And that's kind of okay, what you end up with is you're moving the web server inside the TCP.
Yeah.
For PDO, right? Because your container is going to basically be the contract enclave. It's the services container that's out there, which is not horrible. But and this is why I was saying is that I'm kind of tinkering around with uh, the three options that I was talking about earlier, right? If Bruno can give me, if the one API can give me a relatively easy to use library that I can simply invoke and not worry about the implementation, I'm perfectly happy with that. I doubt very much that that's going to be the case. This is hard, right? It's not because it's not because it can't be done. It's because it's hard.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. I think the other part, I mean, is kind of looking forward. Is for better or worse, secure VMs are the direction that is popular. We have Coco. I mean, Acon would have been my choice for running containers this way, but it does not appear as though it's going to continue to get much love, where Coco will. Coco, the problem is that you got to do Kubernetes. So
Yeah, I mean the what do you say this? So the Kubernetes world together with Fabric, or I mean, how do you say this? So I believe that when people start running a distributed system like a blockchain, like
mhm.
a Fabric network in Kubernetes, then you basically, I mean, you forget all about decentralization, and you just have one
Correct.
admin who has the credentials for your Kubernetes cluster, and then they deploy everything, which is fine for a demo, but this is then not the real use case. But I haven't really seen that someone was able to explain, hey, okay, if you have a Kubernetes cluster as an organization, great, you can run your stuff. And this is how you configure the ingress, egress services to talk to other Kubernetes clusters which run the same components. This is, well,
I
and
have
this is my
seen that.
problem. This is my problem with Kubernetes stuff. For single org deployments, even using TE is great. I mean, there are pretty cool papers about that explaining what you need to do, how to integrate all the stuff, how to do the attestation. Many papers basically stop with the attestation after the deployment, so only the admin does the attestation, which is kind of sad. So the end user doesn't gain anything from that.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's so. Therefore, kind of yeah. I wouldn't say that I have something against Kubernetes, but I have hard times to make this a fit in my head.
So for PDO, you could imagine a set of independent PDO clusters, and the attestation of the servers in that cluster is basically a token that goes back to CCF. So you run CCF in another cluster, or however decentralized you want it to be. You run CCF someplace, it handles the verification of the tokens. That becomes the service registry for it. There are some issues with PDO as well, because we have some notion of dependencies on explicitly provisioning a service instance. And you can't do that with the kind of orchestrator front end that's being imagined for this, because stuff gets shut down and brought back up again. There are reasons why this is how we tolerate the potential for compromises in the TEE, but I don't know, that's the part so the independent Kubernetes clusters, other than the complexity that's required for somebody who wants to bring something up and tinker around, right, which is a pain in the butt. The Kubernetes cluster does not bother me. What bothers me is the work that we're going to have to do to figure out how to do transient instances. So,
well, okay. So I mean, if you have those transient instances, I mean, yeah, you certainly cannot use certain, let's say, security features of the enclave,
correct.
like the sealing.
There's no COP, which is a problem.
But is this really a problem? I mean, yeah, it's a problem, but I mean, is this a problem we have not yet solved?
We have not solved it for PDO because the way the provisioning works. So PDO basically comes at this issue of potential for enclave compromises by saying every enclave in which you are going to run an operation on a contract object must be explicitly provisioned for that contract object. Right. And so you go through the process of building the keys for it and registering the keys for it. So what you would have to do is every time you bring up, what you're going to have to do is have some notion of an orchestrator for each contract object, so that as instances come and go, it continues to build and provision keys into some subset of those instances. Which again,
okay,
it's not rocket science, but it's a non-trivial coding problem. So
right. Well, so I mean, in FPC, I mean, we already, let's say, had, how do you say this? So we were basically assuming from the beginning that, hey, there could be more than one enclave responsible for running one particular smart contract. In particular, when multiple organizations run their own version or their own, let's call it, replica of that smart contract in order to do the standard fabric endorsement thing, right? That's a good thing. However, I mean, as you know, or as you maybe remember, we only implemented the single enclave only implementation,
right.
Which was fine, right? But so but with this concept in mind, basically, so the only point where we use sealing is actually only on the on that layer where we then persist the data, which should actually be shared among multiple enclaves. And in that, let's say in that Kubernetes world, well, I would just imagine that you basically have to tell the operator, okay, you always need one instance up and running, which is then responsible to provision another instance, aka enclave, when it's starting. And therefore, let's say, pick a replica set of 3, and then try to integrate this provisioning seamlessly or transparently, and then it's kind of fine. And just cross fingers that 3 replicas are enough.
Right. And what you lose from that is an explicit policy from the contract owner. Right. So the way that we always described it was, if I'm doing a 10-cent transaction, I don't really care where it runs. Right. If it gets compromised, who cares? If I'm running $1 million transaction, I care very deeply where it runs. I don't want to, for example, end up with my contract being provisioned, my $1 million transaction contract being provisioned at a Stanford grad lab, where there's physical access to the machine, and those who have access to it are highly motivated to break it.
But you can still take this into account, right? I mean, you can still write a policy where you basically,
it's a
I mean,
mere
take
matter of,
into,
yep, it's a mere matter of programming. It's like I
yeah.
said, I know how to do it. Well, probably. I I think that the amount of code to do it well would be very significant.
But I mean, there again, I mean, if we look at what other systems are available to I mean, combine TEs with Kubernetes or whatever, maybe we are thinking about, I mean, maybe what we are thinking about is right now, okay, well, what do we need to provide in order to make this possible? Maybe this is already implemented by someone, and we just have to
Yep.
go one step higher on the application layer and figure out, okay, what APIs are available for exactly doing what we're talking about here.
Yep. And that's why I say I'm poking around. I think looking at the confidential containers project.
Is this Coco?
Coco is the Kubernetes requirement, but it's kind of the active one, or Acon, which is a little more flexible, but I have a feeling the code's going to end up being. My guess is that Bitrat's going to set in soon on it. So,
Have you ever looked into Nomad?
no. What's that? Nope.
It's HashiCorp Nomad. I was recently looking into that. So it's also an application orchestrator. So it gives you a bunch of things which Kubernetes also gives you, like orchestrate your distributed application or a microservice application. But it also does it in a much easier way. So by default, it does not come with all those, let's say, networking abstractions, service discovery, load balancer already integrated in Kubernetes. It basically gives you a tool where you say, okay, I have 3 applications. I want to run them on my cluster. And on the cluster, the only thing what you do is you just spawn as a sudo command a little agent, the Nomad agent, and then you connect those tools together. You get a small web interface, and then you can say, hey, start this application, and then Nomad does the orchestration scheduling of the little applications. And this application can be a Docker container, it can be a binary, it can be anything. And so it's kind of lightweight and easy to use. And
But that,
apparently many people use that for, I mean, integration tests and, I mean, running their stuff as an alternative to Kubernetes when Kubernetes itself is a lot of overhead. Because you need a team of 10 people to run your Kubernetes cluster and then have a bunch of people to run or to write applications which run on that cluster. And yeah, Nomad sits somewhere in between. And I mean, I played around a little bit with it, and it was kind of easy to understand.
uh-huh.
And I mean, depending on what you want, if you use Kubernetes, do you want to use it because everyone uses it, and someone asks for, hey, does your stuff run with Kubernetes? Yeah, then of course you should
You do. Yes,
look
exactly.
should look into Kubernetes. But I mean, if you're interested in, hey, I have a bunch of servers here, I'm doing distributed systems uh, development, research, whatever. How should I deploy the service easily on 25 machines? Well, you can use RCP, sorry, SCP and SSH to do that with 20 servers, still fine. But Nomad seems to be a lightweight alternative.
Okay.
Just a little distraction from what we were actually talking about. Sorry.
All right. I gotta go off to my next one for now.
All right.
I'll get a hold of Rye on this. And I will I'll take a look at the Bruno's repo and see if I can do anything with it.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, if you have the chance to run this somehow in hardware mode,
Yeah, and I'll give you the feedback.
that would be super cool. Okay, and I put on my list to go again through the Hello World PDO Hello World 45-minute challenge and see how far I come this
Okay,
time.
good.
Cool. Great.
All right.
I
Thanks,
wish you a
Marcus.
nice day. Bye bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.